As we reflect on the year that has been, as 2015 comes to a close, at Athlete Assessments we wanted to spend some time reflecting on what we felt from our clients and a number of coaches that we've worked with over this time frame. What were the key themes? To date, we've worked with more than 22,000 coaches and athletes across 41 different sports, and I'll often suggest that that doesn't make us smarter than anyone else. It just means that we're exposed to, the people that are at the coalface of dealing with the various issues that sporting teams across the world are faced with. And for us, there were three really critical themes. And the first one was the issue of athlete welfare. In a recent study done on collegiate athletes in the States, it was found that 41% of these athletes today are faced with a level of depression which they find overwhelming to the point where it's difficult for them to function. So athlete welfare is absolutely critical. Many of these athletes are feeling anxiety to the level where, once again, it's impacting their level of performance. And on a sadder note, even more so, is that 14% of these athletes are considered suicide and 6% had actually attempted suicide. So we're dealing with some significant issues in sport right now. And in professional sport here in Australia and professional sport in the States, we're also talking about, well, how are these athletes transitioning out of their sport and the level of depression that these athletes are feeling also. Well, the study also found that the athletes that were in the sport were more than twice as likely to suffer from depression as what the athletes that were leaving the sport were. And so athlete welfare is an issue which is not going away. It's something that every program has to take very seriously, and coaches have to recognise that, the athlete is a human being first, and as such, we need to look after their long-term health and welfare. The second issue was about athlete turnover, and the reality is that the number of coaches that we work with in professional and college teams, the reality is that these teams are facing with, enormous numbers of athletes that are turning over each season. And the reality is that through the recruitment processes that we're exposed to today and utilising, many of these athletes are being recruited onto teams where there is a cultural misfit. Now, organisations worked this out about 20 years ago when they started talking about engagement, when they started actually trying to measure their culture. And when they went through that recruitment process, the key thing is not recruiting for skill. That's the easy part. The equivalent is recruiting an athlete who can actually play the sport. That's the easy part. The hard part is recruiting an athlete that's going to fit your program. And so we're seeing this as a big issue. In the corporate world, it's suggested that up to 3 times someone's salary is lost every time there's one person turned over. And so when you think about the impact that might have on various teams, you can start to see the real cost that it can have. And the final theme was the issue of what we call the arms race or the facilities race. And what's always amazing for us as Australians travelling to America and touring across more than 100 different Division I colleges that we now work with is that every college has phenomenal facilities. And that what I learned through my athletic career was that the facilities is just, you only need them to a threshold level. And ultimately, when we're recruiting athletes, whilst our facility is great and everything else, the fact is that in a study done on college football players, they found that 90% of those players felt that the coaching staff was the core, if you like, reason for choosing that particular college. It wasn't how impressive their gym was or how great their stadium was. It's the coaching staff which is going to be the determining factor. And in the AFL, which is the Australian Football League, the reality is that every year more than 25% of their playing roster drops out of the sport because of issues not with the facilities, but because of issues with their coach. And yet these teams are spending more and more money on what they call high performance centres. Now, we're not arguing that high performance centres are not critical, but we only need them to a certain degree. And we're also not saying that you have to have one or the other, either a great facility or great coaches. But what we're seeing is that programs that get the facilities right and programs that get the coaching right are the programs that consistently and sustainably succeed. And so in this article, it's the newsletter which is coming out, specific piece. I'd like you to just have a look at what you think are the 3 key issues for 2015, and most importantly, look at, well, what are you doing as a program to address these issues?